Well, good afternoon. I want to welcome you to today's presentation of The Fireplace Show. The Fireplace Show is sponsored by CBC Success Group, and our goal in this is to share helpful information with the consumers of America about their fireplaces, their wood stoves, their chimneys, and other things. And just like every week on the show, I try to bring a subject matter expert on, and this week is no different. Today, we're going to be talking about ways to make your fireplace more heat productive in a power outage situation, because this past week has showed that a lot of people across America, when they lost their power, they've been really cold. And so what we're going to do is share methods of modification and change to fireplaces where they can become significant heat producers without the use of any electricity. So my guest today is a gentleman I've known for a number of years, has a really strong history in the chimney service and the fireplace industry, and his name is Bill Murphy, and he comes from Poughkeepsie, New York. I hope I pronounced that the northern way, Poughkeepsie, and the name of his company is Hudson Valley Chimney. So Bill, welcome aboard. How you doing today, brother?
Good to see you, Jerry. Very well, thank you.
Hey, appreciate you having on. So Bill, let's start out. Like I said, I'm promoting you as a subject matter expert, and I truly mean that. So let's tell people a little bit about your background and all that in the fireplace and the chimney industry.
All right, I've been involved since 1985. Did a couple of years research before that, what I was going to do, getting into the business. And I actually bought the business in 1985 from a guy that was a one-man crew. And since then, right now, we have about 10 people on the crew, looking to gain another 3 more guys. But we've done everything from back then. It was just cleanings to now anything at all, pretty much anything except brand new construction masonry from the footing on up.
Yeah, and right now, so you know, we got one of your employees that's been with you for, I think, over 30 years, Bill, because Larry just tuned in. I think he's worked for you in excess of 30 years. Would that be right?
He's 29 this year, 29 years.
There you go. And also Cheryl's tuning in. And now we got a lot of people watching us. We're getting a lot of likes and that kind of stuff. And here's a gentleman by the name of Adam Chapman's listening to us today. So I appreciate everybody coming in and watching our show today here. So Bill, let's start out here because, you know, traditionally, most fireplaces that are built in America do not produce heat today. The majority of them just burn wood, and all the heat goes up the chimney. Would you agree when I say that?
Your masonry fireplaces, typically, that's correct.
Correct. So last week in Texas, a lot of people got really cold because they had fireplaces and they're not producing any heat. So what we want to talk about today is the things we can do with a fireplace to turn it into a significant heat producer. Now, folks, in this show, we're going to talk about a lot of different things, and we're going to talk about different fuels. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the modifications of a masonry fireplace to where we change the interior. See, one of the things is, some years ago, back in the 18th century, there was a gentleman by the name of Benjamin Thompson. Well, Benjamin Thompson became known as Count Rumford because he moved to Europe, and he was made the Count of Rumford by the Queen of Bavaria. But Count Rumford brought a lot of concepts out, and since that time, we've had other people such as Rosen, such as a gentleman by the name of Chris Pryor. We've had Sleepy Hollow with their Bell's fires. We've got Aaron's fires. So there's a lot of fireplaces that are going on. So Bill, I know that you install Bell fires, and you're very familiar with this process. So let's start out with, if we're going to modify a fireplace and install a Bell fires or an Aaron's fire or a Pryor fire, the process is basically the same. So what you tell people what you do that changes this fireplace to put a new firebox into it in their home.
Okay. Around here up north, most of the ones that we do are heatilator fireplaces, metal fireplaces that rust out. Typically, the first thing people see is the damper starting to not work or fall down and break. And then they give us a call. And typically we know what we're going to find there, and we go there and the unit is rusted out. So whether it's a rusted heatilator, it's a poorly constructed fireplace, a fireplace that's just poor condition, it's old, needs restoration, a historic fireplace, sometimes we put them in. But basically what we're doing is we're removing the firebox, the part that you see in there, the back wall and the left and right wall, sometimes the floor. And we got that all out of there. Part of the smoke chamber and the damper we take out and put this whole system in called a bell fire, which includes the stainless steel liner coming down, a sort of upside down funnel, which attaches to the top of the firebox, and then a new firebox gets put in the fireplace itself.
Okay, so Bill, let's clarify this. When you're doing this work, let's lay a couple things out. Are we having to tear the face off of the fireplace, or do we have to tear the back of the chimney out to do all this work? How do you do this transition of going from this heatilator steel box, or it could be a masonry firebox that's not properly constructed, and how long does this take in an average home for you?
For something like a retrofit bell fire, Aaron's fire, something like this, I've never done anything other than bells. Typically, it's 1 day. So typically, a 3-man deal will get loaded up, come there. If it's a metal firebox, we use a plasma cutter to where we set everything up, our cardboard, our tarps, everything like that. We put an exhausto fan, a fan on top of the chimney that's actually going to pull smoke up and out and dust control in the house. But we torch that out. If it is a masonry firebox, then we actually gut that out using a demolition hammer and remove all that debris from there.
And like we talked about earlier, when we're talking about bell fires, that's one brand of a replacement fireplace. And like I said, we've got others. Now, the key thing is the people that have developed these different fireplace designs, they have done a lot of research through the years, and this involves several things. Number one is the shape of the fireplace. When we look at a bell fires, what we have here is we have a much different interior wall that has a curve going up, which serves to radiate more heat into the room. Would I be seeing this properly?
Correct. Your Pryor fires do the same thing. He's built that. Chris Pryor has built that now. And matter of fact, he just introduced, I think it was like a week ago, a repair unit that's a modular where the panels, they're panels, I believe. And I haven't heard anything enough about it. I tried to get a hold of him, but it's sort of the same principle that the firebox gets put in. The insulation is another big part of it, where we insulate the whole unit from top to bottom. So even though it's a whole new unit going in there, the insulation is for a couple of reasons. One reason is, of course, to protect everything on the outside, but the other reason is to maintain and keep all the heat inside the firebox, inside the smoke chamber and liner, and keeping that hot, getting the gases up and out, and the flues much cleaner this way.
Right. So Nikki has come on and she's saying price. And what I'm going to say about price is it's going to depend on the geographic area you're in. It's going to depend about the amount of work's being done. What I would recommend is that you get a certified installer in to look at this, and people that understand how to retrofit fireplaces, because as far as giving you a price, it's going to depend on that contractor's expertise. Bill and his crews are very, very capable of doing this in a short amount of time. And turning it out in 1 day is a really phenomenal feat that a lot of people can't do. So you need to look locally for someone that can do this work for you. If you're in Poughkeepsie, look up Hudson Valley. Bill, would you add anything to what I just said?
No, I mean, you've pretty well handled everything there. That's fine.
Okay. Now, here's the whole thing. We're talking about a unit that's going to change its shape. One of the things that we found out from Count Rumford's research back in the 18th century was that Count Rumford was educating masons in how to make fireplaces produce more heat. You got to remember, at this time, this was how we heated homes. So Count Rumford came up with different dimensions and different styling. Like on a Rumford design fireplace, you have a straight back wall. And we also have side walls that are splayed in a certain angle of 135 degrees. A traditional fireplace is going to have straight walls back. It's also going to be really deep. And the Rumford, the Bell fires, the Aaron's fires, and all of these are much shallower. So, Bill, what's your experience with the Bell fires as far as the heat radiation capabilities of this fireplace once it's changed out?
First of all, we get a lot of comments after the fact that they can't believe how well this heat, radiant heat comes out of this fireplace. They're not used to it before. They're used to standing in front of a fireplace, feeling some warmth, but step back 10 feet, the room was cold. Now they're finally experiencing a positive heat producing fireplace.
Right. So Bill said the term radiant. So let's explain what radiant is. When we talk about radiant heat, I want you to think of this is the same type heat that comes from the sun. So what we have is we have direct heat rays coming out of this rear wall and the side walls of the fireplace and radiating it into the room. If we look at the average fireplace, masonry fireplace in an American home, you may sit on the hearth and get your back warm. But when you get about a foot away, Bill, you really don't feel anything, do you?
Not at all. Not at
Right.
all.
So it greatly increases the efficiency. And the other things that happen here, they also operate on less air because usually we're putting a smaller flue into the system and we've got a much cleaner burn. So some of the advantages are it cleans up the environment and gives us a cleaner smoke into the atmosphere. Basically, no smoke if we're operating this right. Because when you do this, and a lot of people don't know this, but we talk about wood burning, and somebody may say, well, that's a way to pollute the atmosphere. Whoa, stop. If we have proper ignition, proper combustion, and if people understand how to use a fireplace produces less emissions than that same wood does simply laying in the woods and rotting and going in the atmosphere. So what we're talking about here is something to give us heat into the room with no power. Now, Bill, you said the term earlier, heatilator. And heatilator is commonly associated with fireplaces that produce heat through blowing air into the room. Well, that requires a blower. And with a blower, if we got no power, that blower is not going to give us a lot of heat coming out, is it?
No, I don't know where you are, but up here, I'm going to say 1 out of 50 have a fan.
Okay.
A heatilator, basically, if you're looking at a fireplace, you'll be looking at some grills about 8 inches by 8 inches, 4 of them, 2 up high, about eye level, a little lower, and then 2 by your ankles or so. The cold air gets pulled in from the bottom, gets around the fireplace, and then back out the top, registers up on top. That's how it's using it in convection. And then, of course, if you've got a fan on it, that's going to blow much more.
Right. So you're located in Poughkeepsie. So Poughkeepsie is up in the Hudson Valley region. You're about an hour and a half out of New York City. Am I correct?
Correct. North of it, yes.
Correct. So what we have here is if you kept going up the New York Thruway and went north, before long, how far are you from Syracuse, New York, Bill, approximately travel time?
I'm going to say about 3 hours or so. We're halfway between Albany and the city.
Okay. So I'm going to grab something here, Bill, off my shelf and bring it back. And I don't even know if you have ever seen what I'm getting ready to show you. But in my hand, sorry, I should have had this down. In my hand right now, Bill, is a salesman's sample from the 1920s from the Chemical Toilet Company. Because the reason there are so many of these in your market area is back in 1926, a company by the name of the Chemical Toilet Company came out with a retrofit fireplace. So, Bills, we're looking at this. You can see here's that air entry point you were talking about, right?
Correct. Yes.
And here's that exit point right here. And this is the fireplace. This is sitting encased behind the wall. So what happens is they would build a channel out of brick to bring that air back in. So the air enters through here, goes through this heat chamber, and the hot air is expelled out here. You said you didn't have blowers. Commonly down here, they added blowers to these. So you don't see a lot of blowers these up that way.
Seldom. And if they do, they're gone. They're not working anymore.
Okay, so here's my question to you, Bill. These things were put in, some of them 40, 60, almost 100 years ago. If we look, we're at 2021, came out in 1926. So when you see a lot of these fireplaces, this one is made out of aluminum, but most of them are made out of mild steel. So do these things, do you find them deteriorated where they need to be replaced?
If we hear of a damper, even on the phone, a customer calling up, and says my damper's not working or it's broken, usually the first thing we ask if it's a heatilator, is it a metal firebox? Because that's typically what's going to happen. the customer, that's the first time a customer is going to say, I have a problem. They're not going to see the rusting of holes up inside, up higher where they don't look. That's what we do. So yes, it's a major issue with rain coming down the chimney and sitting on the smoke shelf, which is right behind the damper that opens and closes. There's a shelf back there about 12 inches, and that water sits there. And over many, many, many years, it just rots that right out. And once it rots out, if my hand was long enough, I could stick my hand in the bottom hole and go all the way through, up and through. Close that up again.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I stuck my hand in the bottom hole by your pinky there, it would be, I could stick my hand up and take my hand out the top hole. Now with the shelf rotted out, I could stick my hand in up through the shelf and put my hand in down right through in there. Correct.
Right.
So once that rots out, that thing's over. It's done.
Right. This is the smoke shelf he's talking about. So when water comes in, it comes down the chimney flue through this. The flue liners will be connected. So then the water, if you can see down in there, collects on that shelf, and that's where the system starts to go bad. So we see a lot of these. We haven't commonly seen these fireplaces installed since probably the mid to late 70s when the wood stove craze came in, was where we saw this drop off. But again, that's one kind of fireplace, but keep in mind, we're also talking where this will be made out of brick. So what you're looking at here, you can see that the angles of this are very straight on the sides. And you also see that it curves upward. If you look at the Bell fires, you look at the Aaron's fire, the Pryor fires, the Frisch rosin design, all these different designs, there's a lot of differences between what you see in the conventional fireplace. So again, what we're working is something that radiates the heat out of the room, radiates it into the room for the people to actually feel. So Bill, how far across the room have you ever got from a Bell fires that you can still feel the heat warming up your backside?
Where I'm going to actually feel the radiant heat on me, I'm going to say 12 feet-ish, where I'm feeling it being pushed. Of course, I'm going to stand back 20 feet, it's going to be warm, but if to feel that heat coming on me and warming me up that way, 12, 15 feet.
Okay, and it gets pretty cold in Poughkeepsie. So if the power were out, do you feel like you could keep with this fireplace that you could radiate the heat to stay comfortable in a couple rooms, maybe not the whole house, but where you could be a semblance of comfort if we have an extended period of heat outage?
No doubt. I mean, personally in my house, I have a Bell fire in my house, and we put an addition on the back of the home, and we had sliding glass doors. As soon as the inspector left, we took the doors off, opened it up to the house. There's no heat in that room at all. The Bell fire, there's times that we would even open up a window because we just put too much wood on it. I mean, it was just too hot in that room. The room finally gets to the rest of the home, but it was just too hot in there. But yes, those things can definitely put out a lot of heat. And not as much as a wood stove, I'm going to say. You're going to use more wood with an open fireplace. But it's a positive heat producing unit.
Yeah, the room you're talking about, Bill, if I would guess, I would say that room you added on is probably an 18 by 18 to possibly a 20 by 20 room that you added on the rear of your home that's got the Bell fires in it.
You're correct. And also, that room wasn't insulated the way it should because when we had the permit, we did everything there. It didn't need all that R value. So it's not even insulated the way it should to hold that heat in.
Correct. So what we're talking about here is a fireplace that still looks like an open fireplace for what we would call a fireplace purist. Now, that's one way to make a fireplace more heat productive using wood. Now, let's go to another subject matter. And Nikki keeps adding this in about her wood stove and all this, which is we can install a wood burning insert into that fireplace. And what a wood burning insert is, that's going to be a unit that's inserted into the fireplace itself. It should have a pipe run up through the chimney to size the chimney to fit it. Now, what's your feelings about putting a wood stove in? Because a wood stove insert we're going to be capable of heating a 2,025 square foot home in a power outage. Do you agree with my statements there?
It can, depending on location of the stove. If the stove's on one end of the house and it's just one long, great big ranch, it's going to be tough to get some heat down the other end. But a wood stove running on a constant level, constant time, will radiate that heat and move that heat, and then you're just maintaining the temperature in the room. Yes, it will.
Yeah. So let's also keep this in mind. If you're shopping for a wood stove insert, we have wood stove inserts that go into fireplaces that require a blower to heat. But what you're looking for is an insert that can work on convective paths. And convective paths means we are heating and distributing the air without the use of any electricity. We don't have to have a blower to do this. And if you're worried about a power outage, that's key. Such as, Bill, you got a pellet stove in your house in the front portion of your home. So let me ask you a question. If the power goes out, what happens with your pellet stove?
It goes out.
Correct.
It goes out.
So that's what I want to make sure people understand. We are talking today about systems you can use when the power is out, where there's not a blower required. So you're into survival mode. So what we want you to make sure of is that you can make these type of modifications. You can modify an open fireplace to do that. You can also purchase a wood stove insert, which will give you full house capabilities. Again, I'm in North Carolina. Bill's in Poughkeepsie. Let's face it, I'm a little bit south of Bill. So my heating demand in North Carolina is not near what you've got in Poughkeepsie, New York, because it gets a whole lot colder up there than it gets down here, okay? So be aware. So that is heating with wood. What you got to remember is if what you're putting in or what you're using is relying on a blower to distribute the heat, in a power outage, basically, you're out of luck. You are out of luck, okay? So you'll know, looky there. Nikki is in Newburgh, New York. That's right up the road from you, Bill. How about that?
Very close. Hello, Nikki.
Nikki, if you need anything there, just call Hudson Valley down the road in Poughkeepsie and from that point, okay? I put them in this order with respect to no power and getting heat out is what Jason says. That's good, Jason. Feel free to add to it. I love you participating like this. So that's the first thing is heating with wood. Now, I want to go to the next level, Bill. Many years ago, back in 1952, there was a guy by the name of Robert K. Thullman. And Robert K. Thullman was a researcher for the United States government. And he did a lot of research, but in 1952, Mr. Thullman invented something that has taken over the fireplace industry across America. And what that is the wood-burning factory-built fireplace. In 1952, he rolled this out. And wood-burning factory-built fireplaces are found all across America. This is a fireplace that may be built in a wall. It may be built inside a brick casing or other things, and it vents with a metal flue, what we call a Class A chimney going up. But Bill, these things, when we talk about the classic box that has been put in a home by a builder, how much heat do they produce?
They can produce some heat if they have a fan on them. But typically you're going to find they're just like the regular, they're sucking the heat out of the house. They're not producing heat. They're actually sucking your heat out of the house.
Yep, that's it. So that's the whole thing going on. So, Jason, with some ways I'll agree with you, but to be honest with you, if we have a good convective unit, we can get a tremendous amount of heat. I know you're a little farther north than I am, but from my experience, if you check a stove, such as made by Lopi, some of the other manufacturers that work very well on convective, a lot of the highest tech stoves, they can do a really good job out there. But let's go back to the factory built. There's nothing we can do to that factory built fireplace to make it more heat productive, because you shouldn't put fireplace inserts into those or other things. So when you got a factory-built fireplace and you're looking for more heat, there's only one alternative for you to consider, and that is what we call a fireplace change-out or a fireplace retrofit. So, Bill, you've done fireplace retrofits where somebody had an ineffective wood or gas burning fireplace, and tell them what's involved if you're going to retrofit and change out a fireplace.
First and foremost, if the chimney is on the outside of the house where you actually see the chimney, first of all, these chimneys are typically all have vinyl siding on the outside of them. So like when we're on the phone, we ask people, is it masonry or is it prefab? If it's prefab, you've got siding on the outside of it, just like the house going all up and down the side of the house. A prefab fireplace, number one, also is considered an appliance. It is something that's not going to last as long as masonry. It's going to need repair and replacement of parts and pieces. It can, from time and age, and especially now, so many years later, we have to pull these things out because they're rusted, they're warped. Some of the chimneys inside, you can't get parts for them anymore. They only keep parts for a certain amount of time and they're discontinued. So the fireplace itself can, how do I say this? It's an appliance. It just does not want to give heat, produce heat. It's basic. It's just very inexpensive. That's why most houses now are getting these, because they're just so cheap. You're getting your 3 bedrooms, your 2 baths, and your fireplace. That fireplace is costing a few $1,000s compared to a $30,000, $40,000 fireplace in masonry.
Correct. Now, if we're going to change out a fireplace, Bill, and we've got an ineffective factory-built fireplace, in the industry we call these builder boxes, and like I said, a lot of people don't spend any time speccing out the fireplace. They're going to spend all kinds of time speccing out the granite countertops, the faucets, all these other things. But fireplace is fireplace. So what happens is we have a lot of ineffective fireplaces that have been installed in new homes, and people get into them and they're not satisfied with that heat production at all. So as we go into this in today's world, we've recognized this in the fireplace industry. So we have a lot of what I'm going to call hybrid fireplaces, high-tech fireplaces, but very efficient fireplaces. They are basically a wood stove that you can put into a combustible wall and vent it up through a Class A chimney system approved for that fireplace. I think when you had your retail operation, you probably sold those in your retail operation, didn't you?
Yes, we did. We had a lot of. We still have the chimney business. Then we opened up a retail store. The chimney business, we get calls for repair, existing homes, etc. When we had the store, it was newer people, newer construction. So on the new construction, the chase was built. We go in, we put the unit down on a wood floor and run the chimney, metal chimney going all the way up, all the fire stops and everything that we need to do. That is for new construction. What you were asking before about in the retrofitting, the fireplace has got to come out. So if the fireplace has to come out, what we try to do is take it out the back end, so we can leave all the marble and everything there and pull it out the back. So we'll take the siding off, the sheathing off, the framing out, pull the whole unit in, put another unit back in that hopefully will fit in that area. And then an all new chimney system, everything else is new. If not, we have to technically pull the whole mantle off, the marble off, the granite off. Some of the sheetrock's got to get cut. Framing gets reframed, pull the unit out, put the new one in, and then everything gets done over again. And typically their fireplace looked old, so they'll update it to today's standards with newer granite, newer marble, newer mantles, a whole new contemporary look. So when they start getting into something like this, it's a project, and they bring that whole thing up to today's standards.
Right. And, you may find out different terms. And again, you need to find someone who's certified in your area, who's, there's different certification agencies out there that you're looking for. And they may call it a fireplace change out. They may call it a fireplace retrofit. I've had some people call it a rip and replace and other things that are going on. But doing this, I know I've been doing training in my coaching and consulting business for quite a few years. We do a week-long training actually in New Cumberland, Pennsylvania, where we take people through this. It takes a week and we take them through. Now, when we say a week, We're getting experienced people like Larry that came on here earlier. They're not fresh to the industry. They need to have that basic information coming in, and then we build their knowledge in this particular discipline of changing out fireplaces. But again, you can get an enormous amount of information going to local retailers, going to chimney sweeps in your area, other people that do this. So Bill, from this point, let's go to gas. You know, people got gas appliances in their house, and one of the things you and I both know is some gas logs and some gas fireplaces are going to produce heat. Other ones, you're not going to feel a thing in front of that fireplace. Would that be true? Would you agree with that?
100%.
Okay. So in gas logs adding to a fireplace, there's basically two types of gas logs. One's going to be what we call a ventless or a vent-free gas log that can be burnt with the damper closed. They are not legal in some areas. And then we have a vented gas log. So the difference in these two are the vented log takes room air to go through the combustion process and mix with the gas, the fuel. And then on the vented product, the products of combustion go up the chimney. On a vent-free, we bring the room air in, go through the combustion process, then we cycle it back into the house, which may sound great on the surface, but these units have a usage level and they have ventilation in the house. So it's really, really not the best process to go. And Frank Matola's tuned in. He calls himself FOB, friend of Bill. You know, he didn't call himself an FOJ, which is a friend of Jerry. I mean,
Right.
you notice that? I mean, Frank, I'm going to remember this. You're a friend of Bill, so we're just hiding you right out. So, Bill, that's what's happening here. In order for the vented log to produce heat into the room, we got to go back to those fireplace principles a while ago, where we have the shape of the fireplace made to radiate heat out. Because you talked about the bell fires previously. And, you know, about 10 years ago, I walked into a house that had a Bellfire's fireplace installed with a vented gas log. And, man, the heat that was radiating out of that fireplace was simply phenomenal. I mean, it would blister. I hate to say this. I'm going to put it out. It would blister your backside if you got too close to it there. So with that, again, we got to have the right product. Now, also around the country, we have gas fireplaces put in many new homes. We saw a big switch over the last 20 years of people going from wood burning to gas. But the problem is, Bill, did you ever hear about people having a B-vent fireplace or a direct vent fireplace that gave no heat into the room whatsoever?
Yep.
So,
go ahead.
So let's talk about that a minute. Would you explain for them? I talked about vented and vent free a while ago. Would you tell them what a direct vent does? How does a direct vent fireplace operate on as far as the combustion process?
Typically, a direct vent fireplace is a pipe within a pipe. Typically, they're 4 or 5 inch exhaust. The inner pipe exhausts everything out from the appliance, and then between the inner and outer pipe, air comes down to feed combustion air to the appliance for combustion. So the unit itself in your house is not being, the air is not being stolen from the home. All the air coming into the firebox and being exhausted is from outside. None of your house air like your typical fireplace is. A B vent is the same thing. B vent is sucking air from the house into the firebox and sucking it up and out of the house. So your more direct vent, or even a wood stove that has fresh air coming to it directly from outside, you're making it that much more efficient, not sucking all the heat out of the house and throwing it outside.
Right. So here's the whole thing. In direct vent fireplaces, which is a good concept, you need to research the market. You may need to change out your fireplace. The problem we have with a direct vent or a B vent fireplace is we can't change the burner in it. We can't change the logs. And if you want heat production, you're going to have to go to a fireplace that is rated to heat areas. Bill, what else would you add to that?
I'm sorry, to
what we're talking about changing out the gas fireplace. Did you ever change out many gas fireplaces where people had a gas fireplace, a B vent, or a direct vent that just didn't give them the heat or the looks they were looking for?
Majority of the people that call us think that we can, I'm going to compare it to a car. my engine doesn't have any oomph to it. Can you please put it in a bigger engine? You can't. That manufacturer has tested Underwriter Laboratories, all those parts and pieces in that unit, and that's all that can be used there. You can't trade things out, put things in from another company, anything like that. That part is it, and that's all that's going to go there. You're not going to improve it in any way. So majority of the time, people don't realize this. So those people are hoping to get something, really on the cheap, or the people that say, listen, I need heat. Then we've changed it out. There's nothing else to do. You pull the whole unit out and put a whole new unit back in, which is direct vent now, and a heater rated unit, which produces the efficiencies outstanding.
Right. Now, also, we talked about wood burning fireplaces a while ago. And a lot of times what you can do with a wood burning fireplace, which I have in my home, I have 2 of these. We have a direct vent gas insert. So what we have here is a unit that slid into the fireplace. The unit I have is a convective unit. My upstairs area is about 3,500 square feet. And in a power outage situation, we're not going to get it to 80 degrees, but we are going to get it survivable. Now, I can cut some doors down on the bedrooms back on the far side of the house. And now we can basically live. It can heat up to about a 2,000 square foot area of the house. So again, you may have to take some steps. But my direct vent insert is going to heat without the use of a blower. And that's one of our considerations in the South, because we don't get a lot of snow, but we get ice storms. And we also get hurricanes and tornadoes that can tear up our power system here and put it out for ice storms will knock it out for a couple weeks, as far as that goes. So what would you add about direct vent inserts, Bill, as far as where they would work the best?
Inserts for fireplaces.
Inserts going into a fireplace, something what I have in my house.
I'm not trying to be funny, but anywhere. I mean, if you're going to take a gas insert or any insert and stick it into an existing fireplace, you just upgraded that unit tremendously. You're going to have a heat producing, as long as you put the right unit in, a heat producing fireplace now. Most people are going that way now. They don't want to just. They're energy conservative, the pollution, many things. People are now trading themselves off on the ambiance of the wood fire. So they're going to, I'm not saying sacrifice, but the convenience of a gas fireplace is nothing more than a remote control or a switch on the side. On, off, you're done. You don't have to bring anything in. You don't have to chop. You don't have to stack it. You don't have to worry about it. None of that is there. I love my wood burning. I love it. I love it. I love it. I have a bell fire, like I said, in my home, and I have a pellet stove. Personally, next time I buy another home, I'm going to go to a gas insert. I'm just getting a little older. Don't want to work on it. I just want to hit a button, change the batteries. That's it.
Right. And that's kind of right. That's the situation with me. I'm going to call myself I'm a fireplace purist. I love to see a fireplace with andirons in it, folding screens, that type of stuff. If you go out in my pool house over there, I've got a factory built fireplace with a setup and a gas logs in it. We're not really using that area. We're not worried about heating it at all. So that's not our concern. You come into our home, and we have a 2-story home. We have 1 level upstairs, and we have a very finished basement downstairs. And we have a direct vent insert upstairs. We have one on the lower level. And those 2 inserts can basically heat our home. So again, what you got to decide is what Bill said. Do you want the convenience of remote control? Do you want convenience of a thermostat? Do you want something that the fuel just flows into it through a pipeline? Or do you want to haul wood? I mean, that's where you're at. If you're going to be a purist, what you want to do is select what's best for you. Now, we got one more choice we're going to go over. And this is what we call the Masonry Heater. And this is a really unique item. It was actually comes out of the Scandinavian countries of Europe. And, Bill, when I talked about masonry heaters, is anything you would add in before I take off running on this?
Not many around here. Very seldom. I mean, we probably clean 4, 5, 6 a year.
Right.
Same customers or repeat customers.
But if you went up in the Adirondack Mountains back, you're kind of in you're in an urban area there in Poughkeepsie. If we got up in the Adirondack Mountains where Chris Pryor lives, there we're going to see a lot more of the masonry heaters. So if you're wondering what a masonry heater is, a masonry heater is built out of masonry materials. It can be built out of stone. It can be built out of brick and mortar. And what a masonry heater has is a lot of channels for the smoke to go through. So what's happening is this smoke goes through these chambers coming out of the fireplace. The heat is sucked into the masonry itself, where we warm up the masonry, and then it radiates the heat into the home. It's a really good, even way to heat. Bill, where you're at, radiant heat is accepted in a lot of homes. You have a lot of homes that have radiant heat up in Poughkeepsie, right?
Oh, yes.
And down here where I'm from, we very seldom see a boiler system that will do radiant heat exchange in the homes because we're just not that cold. So with a masonry heater, there's a couple considerations. Number one, you need a skilled builder to do that. Number two, there's a minimum weight of a masonry heater, which is 1,760 pounds. You've also got a unit, and I want to make you very aware of this. It may take you up to 2 days of burning this masonry heater before it's absorbed the heat to where it can continue to radiate this heat. But with a masonry heater, the concept is you're going to fire this unit once to twice a day, and then as it burns, it's going to move it away. It's going to turn it away. Looky there, Bill. There's an old friend of mine and yours, Miss Ruthie, is on here, and she's saying point and click, okay? And Jason says here, he added in, I find people don't have the time to invest in wood burning, which is very sensible. And then you've also got the thing, Bill, you said it a while ago, you and I are not spring chickens. We're getting kind of old out here, hauling our tails out in the backyard to bring wood in. When we had kids at home, it was a lot different, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Different story. He brought the pellets in. He brought the wood in.
That's it. So, anyway, we hope this has been very informative to you today. Like I said, this is the Fireplace Show, and it's sponsored each and every week by CVC Success Group, which is my company. We are a coaching, consulting, and training company. We're based in Charlotte, North Carolina market area, and we work the entire United States. So, Bill, anything you would add to the people listening before we back out of here today?
A real cheap way out to get some heat into a room is putting a fire back in. A fire back is nothing more than a real thick, heavy piece of steel that sits on the back wall.
Right. I've got this up. So what you're talking about here is a fire back would be a plate that goes in the back. Usually they're made out of cast iron, but you also find them out of stainless steel. And what it does, it radiates heat into the room. It can also take the heat off the rear wall of the fireplace, because one of our problems is we often find that we don't have clearance behind the fireplace, and we're overheating the walls behind the fireplace, which can become an issue to us as far as a safety hazard. So I'm glad you brought that up. Keep in mind, they make all kinds of different heat exchangers that you can put into a fireplace. The problem with the heat exchanger is you're going to have electricity to make that blower system work. So again, the theme of today was making your fireplace produce heat in a power outage situation, such as what we saw going on in the last week in Texas through Oklahoma. They've had rolling power outages there. The grid has broke down. So you got to be aware of that. You've also got to be aware when you use gas. This is one of the problems that came in, Bill. I found out many of the gas lines in Houston are not deep enough. So they actually saw areas of Houston that the natural gas no longer flowed because of it wasn't winterized enough, because they just didn't. Nobody ever anticipated those kind of temperatures where it's below zero in San Antonio, Texas. This is unheard of. This is like same climate as Miami, Florida. So anyway, Bill, I want to thank you, my friend, for being on here with me today. You have shared some great knowledge, and not only that, you've been able to see some old friends come on here and say hey to you. How about that, brother?
Very nice. Nice to hear from him.
Okay. Well, man, tune us in next week as we'll bring up live another edition of the Fireplace Show, produced each and every week by CVC Success Group. My name's Jerry Isenhour, and it's really an honor. It's a privilege. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with you each and every week through this broadcast. See you next time. Tune us in on the next episode.